Hello again, everybody. I don't have a question to be answered today, just a random rant. I want to talk about one of my favourite topics in the whole world, and that is death. You're going to die, so act accordingly. I think one of the greatest tragedies about the human species is that we know that we're going to die. We're one of the few species that can be measurably proven to show awareness of death. And yet we behave as if we're not. And that behavior is so lackluster, so mediocre, that we don't get to really live. I'm a big follower of the Stoic philosophy. I often believe my own philosophy is a kind of slightly edited version of Stoicism. And what I love about the Stoic philosophy is they're constantly looking at death. They don't shy away from it the way most people do out of fear. They look at it, they ask themselves, what does knowing about death do to me? What can I do about my mortality to make life more meaningful? They're constantly reminding themselves, hey, you're going to die, and everyone who you love is going to die. So act accordingly. Make the most of this moment. A question that was asked to me by a mentor and good friend, Jesse Krieger. He once sent me a question. He said, what would you do if you only had 1 year to live? And it was a very powerful question. I remember it to that day. And I remember writing up how I would live that final year, what I'd do with my life in that final year if the doctor gave me, 12 months. And what was really great about that is that I was doing all of it, except for traveling around the world, which I'm now doing. And this question was asked to me quite recently. I'd done a lot of self-development before this question was asked, and it made me realize that's how I know I'm on track, is when the way I'm living lines up with that question, where I'm spending my time as if I've only got a year to live. That's the most powerful way I can live. It's the most valuable way I can live. So, a lot of people don't ask themselves this question. A lot of us seem to have this weird, vague sense of immortality. You can tell it by the way people behave. They do things they don't want to do. They hang out with people they don't like. They involve themselves in a lot of mediocre, crappy, time-wasting, meaningless activity. As if there's no time limit, there's no urgency to it. That they're going to live forever, so there's no real need to get something meaningful done now. I see that all over the world. It's like a sickness, a malaise that's spread throughout the world. And my question for you is, why are you convinced that you have longer? Why are you so convinced that this isn't your last day alive? You seem to believe it, don't you? I bet you right now, unless you're suicidal, the people watching this are very convinced that they're going to see tomorrow. They're so convinced they don't even question it. You really can't see anything that makes you think you might die today. And yet one of these days, that is going to be the final one. And it probably won't seem different to any other day when you wake up in the morning. You'll probably have the same amount of certainty and complacency about life, and then boom, you're hit by a truck, or you're diagnosed with cancer, or whatever happens. Your death is not going to be something that you see coming most of the time. It's going to be a surprise. And if you've ever done any form of research into the people on their deathbeds, those kind of documentaries that hospices and nurses make about what people say on their deathbeds, and there's always so much regret there of a life not lived. There's always regret about what they did for their career and how much time they spent with their family and the quality of their connections, how they treated themselves. There's always so much regret. And yet, it wasn't like they were prevented from doing any of those things. They chose not to. And I believe they chose not to because they weren't considering their death. The real death is complacency. So you can be dead while you're alive, in a way. If you're not living, then you're dead. That's the very definition of death. And all around the world, millions of people, billions even, are not living. They're passing time. They're surviving in a mechanical sense. Biologically, they're alive. But their mind isn't with the present moment. They're not connected in any sort of meaningful way to the activities that they're engaged in. There's no real life there. There's just passing of time. And a corpse can pass time. So essentially they're dead. I used to be dead. I was dead for a long time. I was just passing time. Every day was just ticking through the seconds to get to the next day. I mean, what is that? That's not a life. If you're future focused, if you're doing something now only because it serves the future, you don't enjoy it at all now, there's no meaning in it for you presently, it's only to serve a future purpose, then you're already dead. Because that future's not guaranteed. It's a fiction. It doesn't exist. You're not living anywhere. You're in purgatory. You're not here, and there doesn't exist. You're in the middle. You're nowhere. There's nothing wrong with having plans and having goals. I'm not shitting on that. But what you're doing now should be enjoyable in and of itself. It should be an achievement in and of itself before it becomes a measurable achievement in the future. You can't just be in a relationship to get married. The relationship itself must be enjoyable. You can't just be in a job to get to a higher level in your career. The job itself must be enjoyable, meaningful. Otherwise, the whole thing's pointless. That future doesn't exist, and it's certainly 100% not guaranteed. You are going to die. We all are. Your loved ones are going to die. The people important to you are going to die. You're going to die before you get to do all the things you want to do. That's guaranteed. You cannot get through your whole list before you die. Very few humans are capable of such a thing. And yet you procrastinate on that list every day. You avoid connections with the people you love the most every day. What I suggest is doing, like I said, that question, if you had a year to live, you're going to find it very hard to believe in your death. It's very difficult. Your brain shies away from it like a frightened horse. You're not going to really accept that you're going to die and die soon. You're going to struggle to believe that. But you can behave as if you believe that. You can say, if I really did believe that today could be my last day and this year could be my last year, that I'm not going to live to see old age and potter about in retirement, that I'm going to be one of the early to go ones. If I really did believe that, how would I behave? And then behave accordingly. Behave as if. Reorganize your priorities consistently. Every week ask yourself, is this the way I would want to behave if it was my last week? It doesn't mean you have to go on a bender, hookers and drugs and blowing all your money. It just means, are you doing meaningful things with your life, or are you just passing time? All the rules you follow are based on comfort and survival, not thriving. Doing the 9-to-5 job or whatever, if you're doing that simply because it's supposed to be done, then you're already dead. So I thought I'd just uplift you with a bit of inspirational talk about death. But I think it's important. I think a lot of us avoid death, and in doing so we avoid life. You're going to die, or your loved ones are going to die. Act accordingly. I'll see you next time.